Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth McCravey, a website designer and business coach for entrepreneurs and your host for the Breakthrough Brand podcast, the show that's all about pulling back the curtain on how to actually build a successful business. I don't skim the surface around here. If you want a deep dive into the nitty-gritty details of what it takes to run a successful business and stand out in a crowd, you're in the right place. After creating a multiple six-figure-a-year website design business in my 20s, I'm ready to share everything I've learned and everything I'm still learning because I believe the keys to building a thriving business should never be a secret. Here you'll find episodes that are actionable, direct, and fun, like friends chatting business over coffee, and a fresh, honest take on the reality of being an entrepreneur. If you're ready to master online marketing, branding, website design, mindset, and business strategy, then this is the podcast for you. It's time to build your breakthrough brand. Let's do this. All right, guys, so I recently hit that really fun 10,000 follower mark on Instagram, and it took a while. It was slow and steady growth. And in this episode, I'm just going to walk you through 7 lessons. Some are tips, some are literal lessons, some is strategy, but just different things I've learned on this journey, so to speak, of getting to that goal so many of us have of hitting 10,000 followers. So this is going to be an awesome episode if you really want to focus on how to grow your Instagram this year and staying in a good mindset with it all, especially. So I'm really excited for this one. I've been anticipating this episode for a long time. So let's dive in. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Breakthrough Brand podcast. I'm so excited you're here. And like I kind of said in that little intro, I've been anticipating recording this episode for so long, and something I think I'm fairly good at is thinking, like, when I dream of like different goals in my life, I think about like exactly what happens sort of after that goal is hit. And, you know, I've had the goal, like many of us, to get to 10,000 followers for quite some time. And I've always thought about, once I get there, what's one thing I'm going to do? And one of those things was record this sort of podcast episode. So I've visualized myself recording this for quite some time. So it's fun to finally be here. And I'm sitting in my brand new office chair that is autonomous brand, same as my desk. And I'm just seriously loving it. I've literally for the past, actually not just, I was about to say the past few years, the entire time I've had my business, I've used what actually was originally a dining chair that Adam and I had with our old chairs before we moved. I've used that chair for years as my desk chair, and it's really pretty white chair, but was so uncomfortable and was always hurting my back. So I finally invested in a kind of less pretty for being real, but a more traditional looking office chair that gives you that nice back support and is adjustable and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm feeling very comfortable right now, which is super nice. So I want to dive into this topic though. First, I want to say I'm so grateful to have hit this milestone. I'm not going to focus on that this whole episode because I want to get to the tips, but I do want to say I'm really grateful to all of you who've been able to connect with because of the popular app we call Instagram. And I'm just grateful. So I want to say that. And thank you if you're someone who follows along with my business over there and who responds to stories and comments on stuff and all of that. I really do appreciate you seriously so much. Okay, so now onto the stuff though. So I want to tell you guys when it happened. I think that's kind of a fun thing. So about 2 months ago, maybe a little less than that, but about 2 months ago, I hit that 10,000 follower mark. And I saw it coming for weeks. It was like hilariously close, which also showed me one of the things we'll be talking about today is how it's just a number. And I feel like I was shown that so much of like teetering on the brink of it for so long. So I'm not sure if this happens to any of you. I'd love to know if it does, but I have so many annoying, and annoying's the right word, bot accounts that do the follow unfollow thing to me. And they look like real accounts, right? But they've hired some bot company to go follow people that they think would like to follow them. And they follow you for 24 hours. hours or so, and then they unfollow you. So this happens all the time. It weirdly happens to me the most on weekends. I don't know why exactly, but I'll get like 50 followers in one day, and then the next day, 20 of them have unfollowed me because they were doing this follow-unfollow method. So I teetered on that, like almost there for quite some time. And then the day where I was like, okay, it's probably going to happen. I'm at like that 9,990 number. Like it'll probably happen today. And when it finally happened, it's funny. My friend Sarah Clark messaged me on Instagram a screenshot that I had 10K. It was like showing the 10K instead of like, 9,999. And then in that same moment, I had someone comment on my recent post saying, hey, I'm your 10,000 follower, yay, that sort of thing. And it was so weird though, because, Sarah Clark had sent that screenshot showing me the 10K, but on my end for hours, it still was 9,998. And it was just, then eventually it did show the 10K, but it was just kind of funny to me there. And again, like a reminder of like, oh my gosh, it's so just a number. But anyway, that was kind of how it happened. And that day was just literally a regular day. And then I had 10,000 followers. And then about a week ago from the time I'm recording this, I did a giveaway on Instagram to celebrate it. And it was like a combo of a 100th episode giveaway and a 10K on Instagram giveaway. And that was super, super fun. So thanks to everyone who entered. I would have loved to have like timed that up with this episode, but it just didn't happen that way. So anyway, in this episode, I'm going to share what I've learned growing to 10K. And like I said, it'll be a mix of tips and lessons and strategies, but there are 7 total things I'm going to walk you through here. And I'm really excited about all these. They're in no particular order. So the first thing I want to share, this is a tip more than anything, a tip for growing on social media that I have learned along the way. So you have to actually want to serve the people, the number that's your goal. You have to actually want to serve that many people and feel you have the confidence to do so. And if that sounds confusing, I'm going to explain. But have you ever considered the question of how many followers do you think you can handle serving? How many followers do you think you can handle having? How many customers are you comfortable with? How much income are you comfortable with? All of it. And an interesting thing about us as humans, you likely have an unconscious threshold that might relate to how worthy you think you are, how deserving, what feels comfortable but not too much, what won't lead to scrutiny if you say something wrong on your stories, all of that. And it's easy for us to see how this happens with money in particular. We refer to it as money mindset blocks. You guys have all heard people talk about that. Like maybe you have the goal of $100,000 a year in your business, but you are holding yourself back because maybe your parents never made that much money, or you're afraid it'll separate you from friendships or whatever. There's so many reasons it can happen. But the same type of thing can happen with our followers. I 100% believe it. I've seen it play out in my own life. I've seen it play out in friends' lives. So maybe you want, let's say, 10,000 followers, maybe you want 20,000 followers, maybe it's a lot more than that for where you are in your business right now, but you're scared of the scrutiny that comes with more eyes on your business. You're scared of being judged. Maybe you don't think you have enough to say to warrant that many people following you. Maybe it sounds like a lot of work. You're like, right now I have a couple thousand. It's great. It's not too much. But then if I had more, I'm going to have to do all this other stuff. Like maybe you feel that way. And again, I think it's really similar with money mindset. You have to be able to welcome more people into your audience, just like you have to be able to welcome the idea of more money into your bank account, into your life, and into your business. It's the same type of thing. And I think I've mentioned this a few times on the podcast, but I've had so many conversations, especially in the year of 2020, with some business friends about this, of how many followers do you feel comfortable serving? And again, because we see people who are in our industry who have amazing businesses and have grown, they're following very large, and it opens up a lot of scrutiny. I mean, gosh, you guys, if you follow any fashion bloggers, just as an example, sometimes we'll see them share the kind of critical, cruel DMs they get from people they don't even know, because, they're at that like 500,000, 1 million followers mark, and people sometimes might think they can just kind of say whatever they want to them. Not you guys, of course, but that is something we see all the time. Also, people who have the instant fame of being on The Bachelor. I'm always so fascinated with people who go on those shows. I'm actually watching The Bachelor right now, the current season with Matt James. Really quite enjoying it so far. But I always think about these women who are on it who are just, regular people doing regular jobs, not influencers or business owners or anything. And then overnight, they get this huge audience, a lot of whom are people who are angry at them for something that happened on TV. And it's a lot to handle. And so, when we think about all this, how many followers do you feel comfortable serving? Maybe for you right now, it actually might be a lower number than you think it is because you are feeling like some of those fears of growth, all of that kind of stuff. Like I tell you guys all the time, my encouragement would be to guess what? Journal about it. I'm all about journaling about this kind of stuff and figuring out, do you have any blocks there? What's the feeling? Is there something holding you back that you don't even realize? But maybe you do just want a business that is simpler with a lower follower count and that still makes the money goals you have. You absolutely do not need a ton of followers to build a financially successful business at all. But just kind of realizing that. So anyway, that's my first thought. Check on your mindset as you're trying to attract an audience on Instagram or any other social media platforms and figure out, do I feel confident in serving the number of people that is my goal? And you might not feel comfortable quite yet. Maybe you just started out and you're like, yeah, I would love to have, 20,000 followers. I'm not there yet, but I do feel comfortable with the idea. That's great. But you have to feel comfortable and confident serving that many people. Interrupting this episode with a suggestion for the small business owners listening. Ever wonder what you should do for healthcare when you and your spouse are both self-employed so there's no work-provided health insurance to participate in? Well, when my husband Adam joined me in the entrepreneurial job space over 4 years ago, we joined Christian Healthcare Ministries instead of getting traditional health insurance. And it was the best decision for us, especially in these years of growing and raising a family while also running multiple businesses. CHM is a health cost-sharing ministry and is a faith-based alternative to health insurance. We did tons of research before choosing CHM, and if you know me and Adam, you know we are all about doing the math when making big or small financial decisions. And even though it's not insurance, CHM shares 100% of eligible medical bills, which is more than the typical 70 or 80% of medical bills paid for by insurance companies. All sharing is determined by the CHM guidelines, which you can check out before and after joining. And for the mamas and mamas to be listening, you truly cannot find a better healthcare option for maternity care. I had a vaginal delivery and a C-section and birth center care and hospital care between my 2 pregnancies and births, and it was all 100% shared for. And outside of birth, we've had our share of emergency room visits and procedures as a family, and those costs were all shared by members at Christian Healthcare Ministries, leaving us only paying our monthly contribution. CHM is less expensive month to month than insurance, and because there's no network, you can choose your care with whichever providers best fit your family. I seriously just cannot recommend Christian Healthcare Ministries enough. You've got to check them out. Go to elizabethmccravey.com/CHM for more information. Also putting that link in the show notes, elizabethmccravey.com/CHM. Now back to the episode. All right, my second tip to talk through, and these are going to get shorter as I go. It's kind of funny because the last few I don't have as much to say about as these first couple. So this one, oh my gosh, I feel this so strongly. And if you've listened to this podcast at all, you've probably heard me talk about this a little bit. But swipe up isn't everything, and it's not the end all be all of your success on Instagram. Oh my gosh, I'm so sick of it sounding like and people talking like it is everything. So to explain real quick though, if you didn't know this, I actually realized when I hit 10K, a few people didn't know that was a thing that happens when you get to 10,000 followers. So on Instagram, when you get to 10,000, it just literally happens inside your account. You can get the swipe up on stories where you have, the video of you talking or whatever it is on your stories, and you can link it to an external link. And then people will, do the swipe up. And then instead of it being to DM you, it links out to whatever the link you put is. So similar to how you can finally rent a car when you turn 25, and then there's no more big age milestones, particularly for a while. This is the same way. You can get swipe up at 10K, and at least for right now, before and after that number count, there's no special perks. Everyone, unless you have those random restrictions like I had for a while that I don't know why they happened, but everyone has access to using music on their stories, using things like Instagram TV, Reels, all of it. You should, generally speaking, all have access to that. And you can also get verified at any follower account, which I think is interesting. There's a big process you have to go through to get verified, which I've not even tried or thought about trying, but that can happen at any follower account. But literally, the thing that just has a milestone with it of 10K is the swipe up. And then after that, of course, you continue to have it. But here's the thing, guys. Swipe up is not everything. It will not save your business. It will not change your business, etc. There's a reason that Instagram doesn't give it to everyone too. And I think it's really interesting. I've thought about this quite a lot. And I think the reason is because it won't work for everyone, because it doesn't necessarily work that great. Okay, I'm going to explain it. I mean that kindly too, but here's what I mean. My biggest advice, and again, this is what you probably heard me talk about before. I've talked about this so many times, but figure out how to share links and get people to go to those links without having to swipe up. And I would say, even if you have swipe up right now, this is a good thing to figure out. And it is 100% possible. And for the majority of the time that I've grown my business using Instagram, grown my following on Instagram, all of it, this is what I did. Even still, a few times since I've had the swipe up, I still do this because sometimes you want the people to go to the link on a desktop computer. In that case, you need people to be able to care enough about what you're sharing to go type it in on their laptop without the swipe up or with the swipe up, doesn't matter. A great example of this is after I hit 10,000, I recently did an end of year survey where I asked you guys so many questions. And gosh, there were so many of you who answered that survey. We actually just finished doing a big analysis of it that we're diving into today in our team meeting. So I'm really excited about that. But I was sharing that survey on Instagram, and it's a pretty long survey where you're going to be typing a lot of stuff in. And I'm like, I would hate doing this on a phone is my thought with it. So I linked it as a swipe up, but also made a short link for it and put it on the stories and actually encouraged people when I talked about it, hey, this is going to be a better experience if you go to it on your desktop or laptop or whatever. So anyway, there's links like that all the time. And so basically what I'm saying is that if you can't get people to type in a link you tell them to go to on their phone or on their computer or whatever, swipe up isn't going to make a huge difference. It will make a little bit of difference because it takes out the thing that's so true about us as humans, which is that we don't want to put in too much effort. But if you can get good at sharing links, making them easy to type in, all of that kind of stuff, you can do it without the swipe up. Because the truth is, if they don't want to go to the link, they don't want to go to the link. So the swipe up doesn't really make that big of a difference. And it's so fascinating to me. Like I said, I feel like I've learned a lot, looking at my own analytics since having this feature. And so much of what I thought was true, because I've seen it with clients back when I was doing social media marketing early on in my business. I saw this all the time. But if they don't want the link, they don't want the link. So I've had this feature for a couple months now. And I've had times where I link something, it's seriously less than 5 people swipe up to look at it out of I don't know how many, but maybe 500 to 1,000 people who watch the story. And it was a little shocking to me at first, but then I realized that this is what I've said all along. If they don't want the link, the swipe up doesn't matter. And then I've had other links where the majority of people who see it are swiping up, which actually has shown me, okay, this is what people are interested in and not interested in, which has, again, been really interesting to look at. But swipe up isn't your Instagram savior. So making your strategy I'll start doing that once I get to 10K is not smart. Make your strategy right now how to get people to go to links without having to swipe up. Seriously, if you approach everything saying I'll start sharing links more when I hit 10,000, it's not going to happen that way. That's like saying I'll start caring about my diet when the new year happens. We keep procrastinating stuff and it doesn't end up happening. So share the links now. And if you're curious about my best tips for doing so, on episode 52 of this podcast, it's a pretty short episode, but I talk about sharing affiliate links with ease because my business, I do well with affiliate marketing. Let's just say that. I talk about that some in this episode, but affiliate marketing is a huge part of my business. And a big piece of that is sharing links on Instagram. And most of the time that I've done that has been without the swipe up. So anyway, I talk about how to do that well in a way that will make people actually go to the link on your stories in that episode. So go listen to that if you want more tips on it. It's a short one. But seriously, make this a goal to share a link on your stories today, maybe. Just type it directly onto the story, make it a short link that's easy for people to remember and type in, and just encourage people to go to the link. It's as simple as that. So try to get in a habit of doing that with those links you want to share. All right, my third tip/lesson, this one's more of a lesson. You don't need a viral moment to grow your following. So I got this question from someone, I cannot remember who, but someone sent it to me on Instagram right around when I hit 10K. They asked, do you think you need a viral moment in order to get a lot of traction with followers? Did you have a moment that felt viral? And I thought it was such a good question because I have wondered that more times than you probably think. I've thought this so many times of what makes that happen for people? Do you need a viral moment? All of that kind of stuff. Okay, so I just had to pause my recording because our trash truck was in our cul-de-sac getting trash, and ours was not down there yet today. And I debated, do I just skip a week and get a lot of trash in our trash can, or do I bring it down? Which I just brought it down. So, okay, now I'm back and they're out of the cul-de-sac. So, okay, a little behind the scenes there. So back to what I was saying, do you need a viral moment in order to get a lot of traction with followers? So I don't think you need to. I do think it's helpful, even going back to what I was talking about earlier of people being on The Bachelor and Bachelorette. Oh my gosh, talk about a lot of traction and a viral moment, right? But I don't think you need a viral moment. And for me, I would call my Instagram growth overall slow and steady, generally speaking. Then there were some moments where I had a bigger push, which I actually want to share some of those with you. But I also want to share some things that were slow and steady that helped me grow. So this is just going to be a random list and an interesting thing. I've done a podcast episode, different ones that go into so many of these more specifically. So just scroll back through if you want more on any of this and look for episodes that sound similar. But here are some things I think that helped me grow that are more of the slow and steady and just showing up route of things. So one, being a content creator outside of Instagram, the biggest way I do that is with this podcast. But when you're creating content, you can drive people to that content and then drive people to other places through sharing about it there and then them wanting to connect with you other places. Another one, sharing reshareable content, stuff on Instagram or even other places that people will want to reshare with their followers and making that a focus of at least some of your content. Another thing, you guys have heard me talk about this, but showing up on stories and with my face. I think that's so important. I think if that's something you're not doing in your business, but you have a personal brand business specifically, and if you start doing that, you'll see a lot of traction. Another one, having brand photography that I have the ability to use as images throughout my marketing, but especially on Instagram. It really helps you with posting to do that type of photo shoot every now and then. It doesn't have to be an every month thing or anything like that, but a few times a year getting some brand photos done, which I have 2 episodes actually talking about brand photography that are a little bit earlier on. I can't remember the episodes, but if you scroll back, you can find those, and I'll link to those in the blog post for this as well. Another one, this one I'm more cautiously putting, but Facebook and Instagram ads. I think that's another great slow and steady way to grow an audience, but the reason I'm cautious about doing this, do not run ads for the goal of getting followers. That is a really bad use of your money. And it's interesting, actually, I think the kind of ads where that's the goal, it probably doesn't actually lead to followers. It's the kind of ads with other goals that end up causing people to click over to your profile and end up following you naturally. So anyway, don't run ads for followers. I see people do it. I don't think it works, but it is a nice byproduct of ads that have other goals like email list growth goals or purchase goals, whatever it is. So those are some of the slow and steady things that helped me grow. And now I want to share just a few quick, fast growth moments. And again, I'm sharing these from my business, but also I want you to think about how could I apply that to what I do in my business. So think about this for yourself. So one thing is speaking at events. And I think this can be true of events of any size really, but especially events that have a larger audience. Obviously, that's going to lead to even more growth because it's more eyes on whatever you're sharing that day. But one particular event that sticks out to me, because I've done quite a few events, and most of them have been smaller, I would say, but one that felt larger, at least to me at the time. And it was the first real event I really spoke at, was Business Boutique. It's a Dave Ramsey conference put on for women business owners. And the time I spoke at it, there were 3,000 women in the audience, a lot of whom really were going to be ideal clients. And it was so fascinating to me because while I was up there on stage, my phone's back in the backstage room. I don't even know what you call it, but that's where my phone was. And then when I come back to my phone after having been on stage for 30 minutes or however long it was, I immediately had like 300 new followers, which is not a huge number, but it did feel huge at that point, especially because at that point in my business, I think I maybe had like 2,000 to 3,000 followers. So that 300 growth all in that same day felt really big. And then, that continued on after the event, but from people who were at the event. So it might have been even more like 600 people that ended up following. But just having that kind of impact is a big thing that can happen from events, big or small. Another one being guest on podcasts. Like, oh my gosh, you guys, I think this is such a huge one. And podcasts of any size as well, I would say, because if it has listeners, it's people who might end up wanting to connect with you somewhere else. For me, generally speaking, whenever I'm a guest on podcasts, I have a spike in followers from that experience. And a cool thing about podcasts is that they live on long term. So say you're on a podcast and at the time of your episode airing, it's a quote unquote smaller show. Well, people go back and listen to those early episodes when the show grows and gets bigger. So it's something that's like recurring growth, really. So those are a few ones. Oh, and then another one I wanted to share that's a fast growth moment. Doing giveaways with other people who have a similar audience size to you. I think that can be super helpful. Just kind of doing co-giveaways, give away a product of yours, give away something that truly relates to what it is you sell, not like a Peloton bike or a $5,000 Amazon gift card. Those are not going to be followers, at least for us as business owners, that are going to work for us long term. But giveaways with people of a similar audience size that are the goal of more followers. And, a lot of people right now, we hear about they go viral with reels, let's say. They do a reel that's really great, really great, and they get a lot of views and followers from that. And that was their tipping point. That hasn't been true for me with reels. I've had plenty of views on a lot of them and reshares and stuff like that, but I haven't felt like, oh, that's the thing that did it for me. I haven't really explored it enough for it to even be, I guess you could say. But, we hear that a lot right now. But the truth is, I don't think you have to have that. So don't feel like you have to wait on what's that big moment where all this stuff finally happens. Slow and steady is more likely the case. And another thing too, a lot of these people who have had a viral moment would still say they had slow and steady growth before that moment. And that would be true. It's not, overnight success is so rarely a thing because there's typically years of growth, years of work before that moment happens. Okay. So moving on, number 4, this is a tip I've learned getting to this point. Tie your content back to your offers. And another one that goes along with this, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So here's the tip, spread out your audience. And what I mean by that is when you have people on Instagram, refer them back to your website, refer them to your email list, tell them to go look at your products, tell them to go look at your podcast or blog, your YouTube, whatever. When you're on your podcast, tell them to go to Instagram, tell them to go to your website, spread it out and talk about all the other ways to connect with you. Don't just focus on one growth spot like Instagram or your email list or whatever else. I think you got to spread it out. So, last year is when I had big growth on Instagram. Like I said, slow and steady. But, recently, I guess I can't remember now if that was last year or this year. But anyway, I'm recording this in January, at the end of January. But anyway, last year, 2020, I had a good amount of growth on Instagram, but also on my email list. And interesting thing, right now, my email list is almost at the same number as my Instagram because I focus on both. I'm not just Instagram all the way, abandon the email list, who cares? I'm focusing on growing both. So try to spread it out and focus on all the different places you're creating content and push people back to your offers with all the different places you're creating content. And something I just thought of, even as I say this, I want to remind you that you don't have to be everywhere and do everything. Do what gets you excited. Do what makes sense strategically for your business. If you look at the people who are most successful in whatever your industry is, I can guarantee you they probably didn't get there by showing up every single place and always chasing on that hamster wheel of like, what's the new thing? Gotta go show up there. They did what made sense for them strategically for their business, which might not be what makes sense for your best friend who owns a business. You have to do what's right for you. And recently, last year, we saw TikTok blow up and get completely huge, even for business owners and obviously for teenagers as well, making dance videos and all of that kind of stuff. And now even more recently, we've seen Clubhouse become huge. And for me, I actually have accounts on both. I deleted my TikTok app, but I have like my username on there and never really ended up using it. But for Clubhouse, it's the same thing. I have an account, a username. I've explored that one a little bit more, but I still have never sat in on a room. I'm curious to do that. So I don't know much about Clubhouse, but I'm not really doing either one right now. And that's okay. You're going to hear people tell you, you got to go do this thing. You got to go do that thing. If you just keep chasing and chasing and chasing, it gets old and tiring, and then you're not focusing on the things that actually grow your business. So figure out what makes sense for you strategically right now and do that. And for me, when I looked at Clubhouse, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get the app, look at it, because people are telling me that if you like podcasting, you'll like this, which I'm like, yeah, I love podcasting. That's like one of my favorite things I do in my business. And I also do believe in like trying to secure your username on stuff that you might want to use later, which annoyingly Clubhouse. I can't even fit my full name as a username because they let you do less characters. So my name is Elizabeth McCrav on there. I might need to change it to something else, but that's what it is right now on there. And so I made a profile, have a bio, all that kind of stuff, but like I'm not planning on utilizing it right now, and that's okay. And I've had a few people ask me to do a Clubhouse room with them, and I've politely said no because I'm like, that's not really one of my goals right now. I get it that it could be great for my business, and that could change. Your priorities can change anytime you want. You're the one in charge. So like right now, that's not a priority, but I'm open to it changing to be a priority at some point. But right now, when it comes to content creation, my priority is my paid offers and this podcast. And there's not really a lot of room for adding in random other stuff during the day, like sitting in a Clubhouse room for hours talking to people, and that's okay. And it's also okay if your strategy is that you want to go all in on Clubhouse. It's totally up to you. So anyway, that was a little bit of a rant, but just know you don't have to be everywhere and do everything. And just because something makes sense for another person in your industry does not mean it necessarily makes sense for you or that you have to do it. Okay. So that was my tip number 4. Now let's move on to number 5. Okay, so this one's a bit shorter. Number 5 is give people a reason to follow you and know what that reason is. I could talk about this one for ages. I actually have a video in my upcoming course for designers that's going to be covering an exercise on this that I'm really excited about. I might make that more available to everyone else in another way as well, but that'll be my course for designers. But anyway, I want you to ask yourself and be aware of what those reasons are or what you want them to be, and then shape that for the type of content you're sharing. So asking yourself, why do I think people want to follow me? And a great way to find out the answer to that too is doing a survey of your audience, of asking like, hey, why are you here? Literally in our end of year survey, it said, why do you follow Elizabeth? That was one of the questions. And it was a write-in, so people got to say whatever they wanted with it. And it was really interesting reading that and analyzing it and kind of seeing, okay, like what are the reasons? And then asking yourself with that, how can I show up for them in that way? What do I want the reasons to be? How do I make more content that relates to that? And, another way to kind of get into what content can make sense is looking at who you follow and asking yourself, why do I follow them? And then kind of analyzing, like, do I show up in those same kind of ways that are attracting me to that person? I follow this person because I love this thing and this thing for this person. Like, am I also showing up that way in a way that would make people I want to attract follow me? So that's a really short tip, but just knowing that reason, I think really helps shape the way you're going to show up on stories, you're going to post, all of it is just knowing the answer to that. All right, and number 6, I told you these would get shorter towards the end. So don't just post to post. This has been a staple of how I operate on social media and email marketing for the whole time I've had my business. I do this especially with emails, but also with Instagram. I don't just send an email because I'm supposed to send one every time I have a new podcast. I don't do that. I don't just post because someone on the internet told me I need to post 6 days a week. I post when I have something to say. So say something with your content. Don't post when you don't have anything to say. And we often hear the advice, post every day, which I really do think can help you grow. And if you've heard me say that showing up consistently is going to help you grow, it's because it's true. But if your content stinks because you don't have anything to say and you're not making the time to create the content, so you're kind of just like, oh man, it's Wednesday and I didn't post anything since last Wednesday. I just need to put something up, and you just kind of do something real quick that you don't even think is that good. And you're like, I don't even know if anyone will engage with this. I don't even think I would engage with this. That's not the kind of content that helps you. So it's not how frequently you're showing up that matters. It's what the content is and how it connects to your audience that really matters. Literally just last week, I only did 2 posts the entire week. I did Monday and Tuesday, and then all the way until this Monday, I did not post anything. But those 2 posts I did were really good, solid content that people engaged with. One of them, actually, I'm so excited about this, but Adam and I, as you've probably heard me talk about, have gotten into real estate investing, and we actually last week just closed on our first property, and then we were closing on our second property in about a month. And we're currently working on getting a tenant and doing like all the real estate stuff. And so I asked in that post, hey, I'm going to do a podcast episode about this, so stay tuned for that. But I asked like, hey, what questions do you guys have about real estate? And that post got so many comments, so much traction, so many DMs around it, of people just sharing like, oh my gosh, I'm so interested in this. Like, here are my questions. And that post and the post about my podcast episode that week were the only 2 I did. And that's okay. I had other stuff that was going on that week, and I showed up in other ways, like on stories. But you don't have to show up constantly if you don't have anything to say. So let your post, your emails, your podcast, whatever it is, be intentional and value packed. And when you don't have anything to share, don't feel like you have to share. And a little content creation tip I would give you right now, and I probably will do a whole episode about this kind of stuff at some point. But I like to write content when I'm inspired and then post it later on. So I'm rarely writing a post to my feed and then posting it like a moment later. I do it on my computer and schedule it. And then when my phone tells me it's time to do your post, I post it. And that's how I've done my Instagram basically the entire time. For stories, it's different though. I typically am just like, okay, I'm going to do a story right now, and then I post it. But for stuff to your feed that requires a little more effort, I'm not doing that in the moment, which you might want to do in the moment. That might be what works for you content creation wise, but that's never really been my jam. I don't like typing stuff on my phone very much. I even like, for me with texting, I mostly text people back from my laptop, especially if it's during the workday. I just don't love doing all the typing on my phone. So anyway, that's how I do it. Or for something like Reels, I'll go into a creation mode for Reels where I make a bunch of Reels at once and then I post them over the course of a few weeks. Or if I get really excited, I post them like all back to back to back. But anyway, that's how it works for me. So that's my tip number 6. Don't just post to post. And again, thinking about growing your audience, when you don't just post to post, you're teaching your audience that when you share something, it's value packed and they want to read it. But when you're just posting random stuff because you feel like you have to, you teach them that, hey, there's nothing really here for you sometimes. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's a miss. So try to show up consistently with good content, which might mean that it's not every single day or with all whatever advice you've been told. All right, and we are finally to my number 7 tip. This is a tip, a lesson, all of it. Don't get caught up in the vanity metrics of growing a following. Just serve the people right there in front of you. And I was trying to think of how to phrase this tip in a less annoying, lovey-dovey way, because that's how what I just said sounds. Serve your people right in front of you. I get that sounds kind of annoying, but it's so true. And I couldn't think of another way to word it that sounded less that way. And this is seriously the best tip I feel like I can give for growing a following. It's not a strategy. It's a way of showing up, a lesson, so to speak, but it's not like about, you got to use this app, you got to use this hashtag. It's the way you show up. So if you're focused on, I'm really going to finally show up when I hit 5,000 followers. When I hit 10,000, then I'll start sharing behind the scenes of my business. When I hit 3,000, then I'll start showing my face on stories. When you think about that way, you're never going to really get there because people aren't going to want to follow you. If you keep waiting till you get to a certain number to start showing up the way that you know you need to show up. And it's honestly kind of rude of us to operate that way also. I know we do it because of self-consciousness really, but it feels rude because regardless of if you have 50 followers or 1,000 or 20,000 or whatever, those are actual humans who chose to follow you and who you can show up for, unless you have a bunch of bot followers, then they're bots. But the people who are humans are there because they want to follow you and see your content. So don't think things like, well, I'll share that aspect of my business when I have more followers. It doesn't make sense. It is not fair to the people right in front of you and is not going to help you grow an audience. Waiting and waiting and waiting is not going to help you get to whatever the number goal is. You get to the number goal by doing the work and showing up. So always remember too, even as I say right there, a number goal, that 10K, 5K, 20K, whatever it is, it's just a number. It really is just a number. Like I said, to tie it back to the beginning of this episode, I feel like I've had this happen so many times in my business. The reminder of stuff is just a number, but like teetering on that 10K and where it like, it's about to hit 10K and then someone unfollows me. Then it's almost there again. Then someone else unfollows me and I get 2 followers and 5 unfollow me, whatever. It reminded me, oh my gosh, it's so just a number. Like, it's right almost there. And there's a lot of people here who are excited to see my content and who are here listening. And really, guys, a lot of people, gosh, think about talking to 50 people in a room. I know we've heard so many people say that over and over again, and it gets old. When people say like, what if you had an arena with 1,000 people? That's a lot of people. And I know that analogy, like I said, does get stale, but I think it is so true and is a good reminder that like, it's still people, real humans there who want to see your content. And so we want to show up for them. So don't start seeing people as just a number. Is so dangerous. And this is dangerous when it comes to the finances of your business. It's dangerous when it comes to growing numbers in your business, all of it. When you start seeing your clients and customers as a dollar sign or a follower of a vanity metric, like, oh, that person helped me get to 10,000, whatever. It really hurts our integrity as business owners. And I think creates a disconnect for us with our audience that you might not even realize is happening. So try to avoid doing that. Check yourself and focus on, like, I think a great way to counteract this is focus on getting to know your customers. Focus on talking back to the people who comment on your stuff on Instagram. See them as real people who are there connecting with you and connect back with them. And stay humble with it all. It doesn't make you better or worse than anyone else because of your follower count. And we live in a really annoying society right now where I think sometimes success is measured more than it should be by Instagram account. We see someone who has more followers is more credible, and I don't think that should necessarily be the case. And I hope that will change. I could do it again, a whole episode about that. I have a lot of feels around that. But yeah, don't get caught in the vanity metric of it all. Serve the people right in front of you. And right now, I challenge you, again, thinking about serving the people right there. Think about what kind of post could you do? What could you do on stories that's showing up like you have that goal that you want so badly, but showing up like that right now for those people who are there right now for you, and give them that reason to follow you. Honor them for being there by giving them the content that you would give if there were 20,000 of them. If there were double the amount of people, show up for them in that same kind of way. So, oh my gosh, so many tips there. Okay, so that's it. Those are my 7 lessons. And again, I've learned so much through doing Instagram marketing for my business. Instagram has been a huge component of growing my audience in general for me, growing my customer base, all of it. So I'm really grateful to have that platform. And I've learned a lot. And these are just 7 things. I probably could do an episode with 7 more if I wanted to. Let me know if you guys would like that. But yeah, I hope this was so helpful. And to close, I want to share a quote. If you've listened to this podcast a long time, you might remember that early on, I always shared quotes to close out episodes. And at some point along the way, I stopped doing that. And so I'm going to try to bring it back every now and then. But here's a quote for you guys. This is from Seth Godin, who is like such a smart and savvy marketer. I absolutely love reading his stuff. One of my favorite business books is Purple Cow, which he wrote. But here's a short little quote from him. The person who fails the most wins. The person who fails the most wins. And so that does relate back to social media, a little bit of just showing up and being okay with failing, being okay with doing a post that no one likes. Be okay with once you got 10K trying to swipe up and 5 people swiping up. Like, it is okay. The person who fails the most wins. So absolutely love that. So, okay, hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll be back next week with another episode. And if you got something out of this, I would so appreciate you sharing this with another business friend or sharing this with your audience if you think it would add value for them over on Instagram. And as always, tag me because I'd love to see whatever it is you're sharing. Okay, talk to you guys next week. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast, friend. I appreciate you being here. Hey, I want to tell you, if you've enjoyed this episode, then I really want to encourage you to check out my website, where you'll find tons of resources to help you grow a profitable and sustainable business. Over on elizabethmccravey.com, you'll find a lot of great things, some of which I want to tell you about right now. So you'll find free workbooks to help you do things like identify your ideal client, discover what pain points you solve for your customers, or even a guide to help you plan out your Instagram feed. You'll also find my top business tools. Like, yes, I literally list out all the major tools I use in my business on my website, and I have a bunch of special discounts and offer for you guys to snag and try out these products and services. You'll also find my website template shop that helps you DIY your way to a strategic website for your business. These website templates are easy to use, they're built on the Showit platform, and they are gorgeously designed. I have a feeling you'll absolutely love them. So to access the tools and free downloads, go to elizabethmccravey.com/tools. And to access the amazing website templates so you can get started with a new website today, go to elizabethmccravey.com/shop. I hope you have so much fun exploring over there. There's so much great stuff for you on my website. And you guys, don't forget, you can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts so you never miss an episode. And leaving a rating and review for the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening, or even just sharing it with a friend, is a great way to support this show. Thanks so much for being here. Bye, you guys.